Hello and welcome. I'm Dave Palmer, and I'm so glad you're watching because in the next 20 minutes, and I'm going to try to keep this under 20 minutes, I'm going to provide for you in this video a summary of the entire Summa Theologia. I recorded a video previously where I summarized the Summa in 4 minutes, but that was really fast. This one's going to go 20 minutes. I'm timing myself, so I won't go over 20 minutes. And I'm going to present for you 23 of the main topics and themes of the Summa. And if you hang with me for these 20 minutes, by the end of this, you are going to know more about the Summa Theologia by St. Thomas Aquinas than 98% of the population. So hopefully you'll stick with me. I also want to invite you to go deeper in the Summa. Each of these 23 slides, which highlights a particular topic or theme of the Summa, certainly needs more explanation. And so very soon in the coming months, I am going to begin a series of more in-depth explanation of these 23 topics, which you'll see in a moment what they are. And I invite you to join me for this. Okay, these will probably be 30 minutes to an hour long, maybe once a week or so. So I'd like to know if you're interested in going deeper in the Summa. Again, these 20 minutes is just going to be a quick overview of the main topics. The third thing I hope to accomplish in this video is to show you how, from a practical standpoint, from a standard of life, a quality of life standpoint for you, knowing the Summa can help you have less worry and more hope in life, and so that we don't get too bogged down in the daily grind. And when you understand what Thomas was getting at in the Summa, I think it's really going to help you just live a more joyful life. And so that's what I hope to accomplish in the next 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm calling this It's All Good for reasons I'm going to explain, because St. Thomas Aquinas was a very optimistic philosopher and theologian. He saw the world as fundamentally good. Of course, God is goodness itself, and God is our end, God is our beginning. And so really, if we look at life through that perspective, we're going to see that it is all good, okay? And it's just as long as we don't mess things up, we're destined for a very exciting eternity and end, okay? St. Thomas Aquinas teaches us how to have hope and not worry. Let's get right to it. The first of the 23 themes, and again, these are going to go very quickly, and it's going to be less than 20 minutes total, is the nature and extent of sacred doctrine, and also, does God exist? The very first question of the Summa is about the nature and extent of sacred doctrine. And what Thomas accomplishes in the first question, really the first article of the Summa, is that he tells us that our end is supernatural. Okay, we have a certain nature, we are destined for a certain end, but it's beyond us. It's supernatural, and we can't get there on our own. Okay, so that immediately kind of provides a perplexing issue with us. Well, how are we going to get there? This means there has to be some kind of supernatural being that is going to help us, assist us, do something, because if we can't get there on our own, well, we need help, right? And so in the second question of the Summa, Thomas does the famous, does God exist? The third article of the second question are the famous 5 ways, the 5 proofs for the existence of God. But that second question has a lot more than just those 5 proofs. We also learn in this first of 23 topics that our end is heaven. Our end is beatitude. Okay, it's exciting. And so he sets the stage. Okay, this is where we are headed, and the rest of the Summa is all focused around that. All right, so if in the first 2 questions of the Summa you are intrigued by this journey that we're on that has a supernatural end, and that you are convinced in question number 2 that God does exist, the next natural thing that we would ask ourselves is, well, what is God like? What is God? What are the attributes? On this screen, I have 8 of the attributes of God. It's not comprehensive. There are others, attributes of God, but God is existence. And so God is kind of like everything. And what I hope to accomplish in this second lesson is to create in you a fascination with God, where you are just blown away and you want to know more about God, what he is, who he is, and how can we get to know him better. Okay, he is immutable, he is simple, he's good, he's infinite, he's one. Okay, these are just some of the attributes. This is very fundamental, because if you don't understand God, the rest of the Summa makes no sense, because God is our beginning and God is our end. God is that for whom we are journeying to be united with him in eternity. And if you don't have a fascination with God, well, then it's not worthy of a journey to get to him, okay? The next thing, again, now at this point, after 2 lessons, hopefully you're like, I really am fascinated with this God. I know his attributes. I know a little bit about him. We're never going to completely comprehend God, but there should be at least a great desire to come to know him. And the next theme in the Summa is that Thomas teaches in the section about God is that God can be known by us. Now notice it's not active that we can know God. It's that God can be known by us. It does tell us something about us because a grasshopper and a dog and a monkey can't know God. But we can because we're rational creatures. Angels can know God. We can know God. But more importantly, God can be known by us. And so this tells us something about God. All right, just like that girl in the little picture there can come to know a dog, we can, in a much different way, come to know God to some degree. All right, so that's lesson number 3 of 23. We move on now. Again, we're beginning to establish that relationship between us and God. We can come to know him. Now we learn that God not only has intellect and has will, but God's intellect is the same as his nature. God's will is his essence. God is, all right? And God also has providence and governance over the entire world. Now, this is where we get back to the, it's all good theme. If we really internalize this, we understand that God's in control, that takes a lot of pressure off of us, okay? We don't have to worry as much about getting everything done and accomplishing everything and all the daily anxieties that we have. If we can surrender to God and know that he is in control and he is in charge of everything, he has providence over all creatures, including us, that is part of the it's all good theme because we can relax. Okay, we'll also learn about predestination, which is an interesting topic as well. All right, we move on to number 5. By this time, we're like, okay, this is pretty cool. This whole relationship between us and God. God's our final end. God, his attributes, and he can be known by us. Now we learn in the 5th lesson that God is a communion of persons. Okay, this is something we can relate to very well because every single day we have relationships with people, whether it be our spouse or our kids or our coworkers or our friends or people we see at the grocery store. We learn excitedly that God is kind of the same way. Within the Blessed Trinity, there is a communion of persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We know that, but what does that mean? What does it mean that God has relations? What does it mean that there are notions within God, that there is procession, inspiration, and generation? Okay, all these interesting words. This is actually a complicated part of the Summa, but it's an important one because it's a way that we can relate to God, as in, God being intelligence and will, because as we'll see in a second, and as you know, we have those as well. All right, so now we move on, and all right, we're right on time. Creation. We have this incredible God. We know a little bit about us and that he's our final end, he's our beginning. And now we're like, well, why the birds and the butterflies and the trees and the plants and the roses and all the clouds and the sun? What's this all about? Why did God step outside of himself and create a world? What you're going to learn in this lesson is that everything in creation is intended to tell us something about God. And this, I hope, will fundamentally change the way you see the world. You'll never see a bird the same, or a cloud, or a blade of grass for that matter. Okay, so creation is really interesting. He also asks, why so many creatures? Why the multitude of creatures, all right? All right, here's an interesting part of the Summa as well. The angels, incorporeal creatures, no body, they have intellect, they have will, which means they're very close to God. Okay, God is intellect, God is will. So the angels in their nature are closer to God than we are in many ways, although we'll kind of flesh that out a little bit in this section. Do angels speak to each other? Do angels move? Are they in a place? Can they love? Do they have will? Do they have intellect? This kind of stuff. How is their way of coming to know things different than us? Fascinating lesson number 7 with the angels. Number 8, the human person. Now, this is going to be a challenging one to get into one lesson because there's so much. We, unlike God and even unlike the angels, are much more complicated. We have bodies and souls, matter, form, souls, intellect, will, passions, desires, different kinds of passions. We're interesting creatures, and we're journeying through this life and trying to achieve our final end, which is God, being assisted by the angels. And how does this all come together? This will be a very interesting lesson if you hang with me and watch number 8. Number 9, we're going to talk about the first man and woman, otherwise known as Adam and Eve. And with this one, we want to make an important distinction between Adam and Eve before the fall and after the fall. Because before the fall, they were given a very, very special grace, original justice, original innocence. And they were fundamentally different after the fall. They were like us, where we have a war going on within ourselves with passions that don't always obey our reason, and concupiscence, and falling into sin, and lacking, many of the virtues. And so to understand Adam and Eve before the fall gives us a glimpse of beatitude, of heaven, of what God originally intended for us to have, and what he has promised that we will have if we just don't mess things up. Okay, and so this will be an interesting lesson, the 9th one. All right, remember the first lesson we talked about our end is supernatural, right? Our end is God. It has to do with teleology. Okay, remember providence and governance. God is leading us to our final end. But we also know that sometimes other things get in the way. Good things we place as our end, like money or athleticism or power or our jobs or even our relationships, right? These are all good things that can be on our way to our final end, but if we stop there or we place them as our final end, we're never going to accomplish that which God intends us to accomplish. And so we find out that really our final end can only be found in union and perfect knowledge of God. All right, we are creatures that do things. We have actions, we have will, we have free will. As we get into the second part of the Summa, Thomas starts talking about the individual human actions and how they play into this whole theme of journeying towards God, cooperating with providence and teleology, where God is trying to direct us to our final end, and sometimes we get in the way. And so how does free will get into this? Because we're not robots, we're not even other creatures which are kind of being pushed to their final end. Got Nietzsche on there because he had the will to power, that everything was just a matter of trying to get power. So we'll talk about some of these other philosophers as well. All right, the passions. We all know about passions because we all have them. They're really for our good, fear and even anger. We get angry because, somebody did something that offended us, or, was, we're indignant about something. Passion of love is good because it brings us together and it propagates the human race, and we have babies. And so what's the role of passions in all this, and how do they protect us, and how can they get a little bit out of control sometimes as well? Habits and virtues, okay? Things become habitual. Again, God has provided so much for us to accomplish our final end, and he wants to help us so much. And so how do the theological virtues, the cardinal virtues, being able to develop habitual actions that guide us to our final end, how is this all related to the overall picture of achieving our final end? All right, so we mess things up. God is directing us, and when we are inordinate in one way or the other, or we place our final end in something that is intermediate and not our final end, this is when sin and vice come in. It's a result of original sin and the fall of Adam and Eve, so we'll have a lesson on that. The law. This is very interesting. 4 kinds of law: human, natural, eternal, and divine law. The law is, the purpose of it is to keep us on the straight and narrow. Some of the law is from God, some is devised by us, some is ingrained in us, like the natural law. This is really important because, again, God is providing for us the framework and the laws, and just saying, please stay on track. I'm doing all I can to help you get to where you are. Grace is a participation in the life of God. All right, this is what God pours out to us to say, listen, I want to pour myself out to you so that you can spend eternity with me. But he doesn't predestine us in the sense that he doesn't also allow us to have free will. And this is where merit comes in, because God has created us in such a way that he allows us to cooperate by divine ordination in our eternal salvation. So grace is extremely, extremely important. All right, 17 is the theological virtues, the object of which is God. They're infused, they're not earned, absolutely necessary. We receive them in the sacraments: faith, hope, and charity. What other virtues and beatitudes and gifts of the Holy Spirit are related to these? What are the vices opposed to them? Very, very important. All right, cardinal virtues don't directly have their object in God, but the cardinal virtues help us on this earthly journey to order our passions, order our life, to live justly, to make good decisions, all in the end so that we can cooperate with our loving God and achieve our final end. So that'll be an interesting lesson. All right, in the third part of the Summa, we finally get to the introduction of Jesus Christ. We know a lot about God now. We know a lot about the human person, and all of a sudden we have a person who is all God and all man. You're like, wow, that's incredible. You have a greater appreciation for who Jesus Christ is and how through his model and through his life, he helps us to be guided to our final end. And of course, there's a number of questions about the Blessed Virgin Mary and also the life of Christ. Number 20, the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Why did Jesus have to suffer? Why did he have to die such a bloody death? What is the whole point of this? Was there any other way that God could have saved us without Jesus having to go through all that? Well, Thomas asks that specific question in the Summa, and we'll talk about the necessity of the passion, death, and also the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and how that opens up the kingdom of God for us. Number 21, the sacraments. We talked about grace being a participation in the life of God. The ordinary way that we receive sacramental grace, sanctifying grace, is through the sacraments. Okay, so again, God has instituted these wonderful sacraments to say, listen, I want to pour myself out to you, and I've given you 7 sacraments that you receive at various times throughout your life. Some one time, some are more than once. Avail yourself of them, because I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to get you to your final end. This is an important part of the Summa. And then we move on now to the 22nd lesson. This is great, because if you're following through the Summa and you've been through all of this about the human person, our final end, this amazing God that's trying to get us to our final end, this is kind of the payoff. We learn about what will it be like in heaven. All right, what will be the qualities of the resurrected body. Okay, the bodies are agile and subtle. There's clarity. There's impassibility. What does all this mean? Okay, I promise you, if you watch this video, you're going to be like, man, I can't wait to get to heaven. This is going to be like so exciting. All right, because it really is. The way Thomas, describes heaven, it's pretty cool. When will the resurrection be? What will be the signs of the end and that kind of thing? Finally, as you might expect, we come to the final theme or topic of the Summa, and it's the last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. This, may sound daunting, but if you understand all the rest of the Summa, you're like, bring it on. I'm going to avail myself of sanctifying grace and the theological virtues, and live on the straight and narrow, and understand the laws that in teleology and providence and all these kind of things, and you'll be like, I can't wait. And not only that, I want to help every other person that I know reach their final end. Okay, so this is what the Summa is about. All right, I kept it under 20 minutes, I think, and this is what I'm excited to share with you on a broader basis. Okay, first of all, 23 videos where we talk about the themes of the Summa, as I just explained, and also explain how an understanding of this will help you have more hope and worry less if you understand the main themes of the Summa. All right, so please share this video, comment on this video, and let me know if you are interested in going deeper in your understanding of the Summa Theologia by St. Thomas Aquinas. God bless you.